While we had already covered the Hunter Valley Steam Fest, the New South Wales Steam season for 2024 began on Saturday, March 9th, 2024, with Powerhouse Museum's 3265 hauling Transport Heritage New South Wales' steam to the surf train to Wollongong in the Illawarra. Here we see the 32 sprinting its way through Carlton from Sydney on the Saturday. Originally, 3801 was to haul the train, but due to its cylinders in need of reboring at its base in Thirlmere, 3265 was the replacement. 4916 is soon assisting the train due to 3265 being less stronger than 3801 for the Illawarra Mountains. Later in the day, we see the 32 passing over Ellen's subway at Mortdale on the return journey to Sydney, after dropping off its passengers at Sutherland. Next day, 3265 is now seen at Kogarah with its Sunday passengers on Sunday, March 10th, 2024. Then we see the 32 class making its way back to Sydney once again, passing through Oatley after dropping off its Sunday passengers at Sutherland. Thomas weekends return to Thirlmere from Friday, March 15th to Sunday, March 24th, 2024. Here we see 3001 dressed as Donald once again, taking passengers from Thirlmere, named Sodor for the event, to Buxton and back, with 4916 leading the train on the forward journey on Sunday, March 24th. (2024) would mark 15 years since the museum had held out with Thomas. It started in 2009 and is still going strong today. While we await for Donald to depart, CPH Rail Motor number 18 dressed as Toby is seen pulling into the station with passengers from the museum's roundhouse. As Toby departs the station, it had to make an emergency stop as a passenger dropped their sunglasses from the window. We see Toby once again as Donald now departs Sodor Station to Buxton. While we wait for the trains' return, we head into the museum grounds and see 1803 dressed as Thomas the Tank Engine on display with kids visiting his cab and blowing his whistle. The recent Day Out with Thomas events are all theme related. Last year's theme was about being colourful, and this year is bubble themed. While families are enjoying their weekend, 3801 is seen in the museum's roundhouse. Early in 2024, Transport Heritage New South Wales uncovered several 3801's parts to be worn beyond expectation and require full replacement. The repairs and parts required are critical for safe and efficient operation of 3801 and includes but not limited to its crossheads, slide bars, ball rings and piston rings, as well as the reboring of the cylinders and repositioning the driving wheel sets. While work to return the loco to service is estimated to take 8 to 12 weeks, some parts are not available immediately, with materials having to be sourced and procured and patents constructed to enable casting of the new crossheads. At the time that this recording was made, which was done in April 2024, Transport Heritage New South Wales expects 3801 will return during the final months of the 2024 steam season. Meanwhile, Donald returns with its 11:30 passengers with Toby running alongside. We now move to Cooragard, and 4916 is seen leading the train once again to Buxton. Then we see Donald leading the train back to Sodor. More Thomas Days are scheduled later in the year. Check the New South Wales Rail Museum for more detail. As we move into the Easter long weekend, we're at Douglas Park of the Southern Highlands on Easter Saturday, March 30th, 2024, to see 6029 the Garratt make its way with passages to Thirlmere from Sydney to visit the New South Wales Rail Museum. Later, we move to Thirlmere and see the locomotive climbing hard on the banks. At the museum, 6029 is now parked next to the main museum building and, quite fittingly, sibling 6040. .6040, like 6029 and its other siblings, was built by Bear Peacock & Co. in Manchester, England. 6040 was built in 1956 and had entered service on the New South Wales Government Railway in 1957. However, its service life was short-lived, as it was withdrawn from service in 1967. 6029 entered service in 1954 and was withdrawn from service in 1973. The carriages, VHO van and water gin will now be shunted by 4490 in the sidings ready to be serviced before 6029's return journey to Sydney. The double plus on 6029's right indicates that it's a heavy type of Garratt, which was a modification the Garratts had back in service life. 6040 is also one as well. The last time 6040 ran in steam, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album was number 1 on the Australian albums chart. The letters DC on the left of the tender indicates that 6029 was among 31 of the Garratts during service life to be converted to dual control, to run 10 to 1st easily. 6040 wasn't among the 31 to be converted. 6029 will now head to the museum yards ready to be serviced. Meanwhile, 3001 is now heading for Buxton with one of its shuttle trains with 4807 at the back assisting. Instead of pulling into the station at Buxton, 3001 stops nearby the local fire station, and now 4807 leads the train back to the museum. At Thirlmere, 4490 shunts 6029's train back to the museum building. Meanwhile, 4807 and 3001 pull into the station. A carriage attendant was throwing a couple of little chocolate Easter eggs from the train.
Good to see you again, yeah. Trying to catch your car on Facebook for the first time.
Later in the day, 6029 is now at the museum ready for the journey back to Sydney, as 3001 heads off to Buxton once again. We leave Thirlmere and move to Picton to see 6029 heading for Sydney. But before that, 8175 from Pacific National can be seen passing us at Matthew Lane Bridge with a cement train. We now end Easter Saturday with 6029 passing through. The engine and its train will be making a second run to Thirlmere on the Easter Sunday. On Saturday, May 4th, 2024, we're at Strathfield in Sydney's West to hop on board Mercedes-Benz 0305 Mark I 1923 from the Sydney Bus Museum, which happens to be operating on its 46th anniversary of its entry into service life. These buses were on loan for the day to Transport Heritage New South Wales to take members to the new Chullora Heritage Hub at the former Chullora Railway Workshops. 1923 entered service at Kingsgrove Depot in southern Sydney on May 4th, 1978, and ran services through Newtown to the city, cross-country routes from Rockdale to Drummoyne, and around Brighton, Les Sands and Sans Souci until it was withdrawn from service in 1992 after travelling 580,000 kilometres and was later transferred to the museum that year. The vintage bus in front of us, also from the Sydney Bus Museum, 1765, is a Leyland Leopard Mark II PSU3A/2R. The prototype, affectionately called Mr. Whippy, came into service in 1964. 232 chassis of the Leyland Leopard Mark Is were later ordered in the mid-1960s. 200 more were later ordered, with a final order of 312 for the Mark IIs, creating a total of 745, making it the world's largest Leopard fleet. 1765 was the last of the Mark II Leopards ordered. It began its service life at Brookvale Depot in Sydney's north in 1976, and was then later transferred to Willoughby Depot in the lower north area of Sydney, and stayed there until it was withdrawn from service in 1989. On October 20th, 1989, a special ceremony was held at the Rocks in Sydney to mark the withdrawal of the last Leopard, and then New South Wales Transport Minister Bruce Baird presented 1765 to the Bus Museum. The buses now arrive at the Heritage Hub. The waiting passengers outside were from an earlier tour group ready to be transported back to Strathfield. Outside of the Heritage Hub is New South Wales Government Railway 7100, the sole member of the 7100 class fleet. Originally numbered 4501 since 1952, it was renumbered 7100 in October 1961 to free up the number range of the 45 class diesel locomotives that were to be introduced in 1962. The locomotive was built here in Chullora using components supplied by Commonwealth Engineering, Comeng as shortened. 7100's purpose was to provide experience of operating powerful electric locomotives prior to the arrival of the New South Wales Government Railways 46 class diesel fleet that were ordered from England to operate on the main Western Line to Bonefells. 7100's first opportunity to pull passengers came in October 1955, when electrification reached Penrith in Greater Western Sydney. When the first of the 46 class came in 1956, it became a regular assisting engine for steam-powered trains between North Strathfield and Hornsby on the main North Line. A year later, 1957, it was a shunter at Flemington Maintenance Depot at Lidcombe in Western Sydney. It was withdrawn from service in 1974 due to failures and was placed in storage until it made its home at the New South Wales Rail Museum at Thirlmere. When the museum was under its redevelopment scheme, it was transferred, along with other items from the museum's collection, to the former Broadmeadow Locomotive Depot near Newcastle in 2008 for storage, and stayed there until 2024, when all the heritage assets stored there were later transferred to Chullora to be stored away from the exposure of Mother Nature. After this tour, 7100 will later be moved into the Heritage Hub. We'll now take a look inside the former Tank Annex building. The building was constructed between 1941 to 1942 and was designed and built by Stewart Brothers Proprietary Limited as a two-large bay structure for tank assembly during the Second World War. The arrangement between the Munitions Department and the New South Wales State Government in 1941 resulted in the Railway Department being appointed the major contractor for the assembly of the Australian cruiser tank Mark I. The works at the railway workshops were to include the manufacture of some parts of the tanks, as well as overall assembly. After 1943, the Ministry of Munitions focused on the Mark III tanks, with the first completed at Chullora Railway Workshops in June of that year. When the war was over in 1945, the Tank Annex was converted into the tender shop to deal with the construction, maintenance and repairs of the tenders for steam locomotives. One of the bays in the tender shop would later be converted for use for boiler repairs in 1947. It was then converted to a diesel locomotive repair shop in the late 1950s, with the building divided into two bays. One bay was used for maintenance and repairs of their bogies, while the other was used for maintenance and repairs for their traction and auxiliary motors, control panels, and other locomotive electrical gear. The building was then converted into the bogie and electrical workshop, and then later into the Electrical Maintenance Centre in 1986 to 87, until the facility was decommissioned from service in 1994. The facility is now heritage listed due to its significance during the Second World War, and is now converted into the Heritage Hub for Transport Heritage New South Wales. Its key objective for this project was to establish a secure, weather-resistant functional store for the historic collection, while also conserving the workshop's historical significance. Some might remember seeing this tender next to the line that runs from Thirlmere to Buxton. This tender belonged to 1709 back when its class was known as the H373 class before being called the Z17 to 1924. This tender is called the Tab 381. The current tender that is behind 1709 came from a 32 class locomotive in 1964. It is hoped that one day in future the original tender will be reunited with 1709. One of the locomotives stored here is 1219 of the Z12 class. It entered service in 1880 as a C79 class locomotive and pulled passenger and mail trains. The 12 class engines were designed and built by Bear Peacock & Co. in Manchester, England, but 1219 was one of 26 to be built by Dubs & Co. in Glasgow, Scotland. It was the standby engine for 1243 for the New South Wales Government Railways vintage train, until it was withdrawn from service in 1965. Behind 1219 is 2606 of the Z26 class fleet, and is also a Dubs & Co. built locomotive. Originally, before the 1924 renumbering scheme, they were called the I-17 class. 2606 entered service in 1891. Originally, these engines were made to assist freight trains over the Blue Mountains line, but were found unsatisfactory due to insufficient water capacity and were not flexible over tight curves. Several of these engines were sent to Waterfall in the Illawarra to haul coal and blue metal trains. Others were shunting engines at Darling Harbour and Alexandria Goods Yard, and others were stored at the old locomotive depot in Hamilton for working trains for the interchange from the South Maitland Railway at East Greta to Newcastle. 2606 retired from railway service as a shunting engine in Bathurst in 1970 and is one of two preserved. The other, 2605, is now preserved at the State Mine Museum in Lithgow in the Blue Mountains. We conclude our visit with New South Wales Government Railway 5096 of the D50 class, originally called the T class prior to 1924. 5096 was built by the Klein Engineering Company at Granville in 1907 in conjunction with Bear Peacock & Co., who had built and designed these locos since 1896. 5096's significance was that it was the first locomotive to be built by Klein Engineering, and after its inception, they would go on to construct further locomotives for the New South Wales Government Railway, including the mighty D57 class locomotives, and of course Australia's most famous steam locomotive, 3801. 5096's primary purpose was to pull freight trains until it was withdrawn from service in December 1965 and was used as a stationary boiler until it was decommissioned in 1967 and was then preserved to the New South Wales Rail Museum. Like 1219 and 2606, 5096 was transferred to Broadmeadow in 2008 during the museum's redevelopment scheme and was transferred here to Chullora very recently. The Tank Annex is just Stage 1 of the Heritage Hub project. Stage 2 will be focused on the locomotive workshops nearby and is yet to commence as of the filming of this segment. For more information about the Heritage Hub, link is in the description. We are down at Sydney Central Station on a wet and dreary Saturday, May 11th, 2024, to see the Powerhouse Museum's 3265 and Transport Heritage New South Wales's 3526 getting ready to take passengers to the Blue Mountains as far as Mount Victoria, as some passengers will alight there to travel by bus to the famous Zigzag Railway in Lithgow that was reopened in May 2023. We hope one day to cover the famous Heritage Railway in a future Rail Around New South Wales video. Originally, this train was scheduled to run in September 2023, but was postponed to May this year due to the carriages in need of attention at Thirlmere. Also, 3801 and 6029 were planned to double-head this train, but as mentioned earlier in the video, 3801 is in need of repairs at Thirlmere. No official reason was made by Transport Heritage New South Wales about the garret being replaced, but all in all, it's still steam-powered. With passengers on board, the 32 and the 35 will make their way to the Blue Mountains with stops at Strathfield and Penrith to pick up more booked passengers. The two locos will do the same trip on Sunday, May 12th. .4501, also from Transport Heritage New South Wales, will be assisting the train on both days as well. While not ideal weather for a picnic in the south coast, 5917 and its passengers brave through the rain at Carlton as it pulls the first Kiama picnic train for the year on Saturday, May 11th, 2024. .42-107 is seen assisting the train. Next day we see 5917 passing through Alawa on Sunday, May 12th. The engine has to slow down outside of Hurstville Station. This is done in order to prevent too much of its steam wafting into the local supercentre, which hangs over the railway station. Later that night, 5917 is now seen passing through Carlton, heading for Tempe, after dropping off its passengers at Wollongong and Sutherland. At the time when this was filmed, Australians had witnessed Aurora Australis, which is the southern counterpart of Aurora Borealis. A bit of it can be seen towards Cogra, the next town over. Unfortunately, most Sydney-siders hadn't the chance to see it due to the many days of rain and cloudy weather. The last Aurora Australis at this size, that was seen in May 2024, was last seen in October 2003. While usually held in March to open up the New South Wales steam season, the Thirlmere Festival of Steam for 2024 was held between Saturday, May 18th and Sunday, May 19th. The reason it was moved from March to May was that last year's event was held in very warm weather and was switched to a more cooler month, which was quite a blustery day, as New South Wales experienced a polar wind on the Saturday. 3265 seen here at Thirlmere Station will be leading a shuttle train to Buxton with 3001 at the other end. 6029 can be seen in the background being serviced, ready for its next run to Picton with 4001. As the 32 and the 30 make their way to Buxton, 6029 now heads for its train waiting outside Thirlmere Station. 6029 is now seen pulling into Thirlmere in readiness for its trip to Picton. The loco now leaves Thirlmere to make way for 3001 and 3265. We now move inside the museum and see Colgrab 1064 on display as we await for 3265 and 3001 heading off to Buxton once again. Around the museum grounds, we see 1064 being serviced. Making its debut for the festival is the display of a Sheffield pump trolley. This pump trolley was placed on display for demonstration runs for patrons. These were common to see on the railways for maintenance work or mining, and in rare cases, passenger runs. Also on display is 3526, with the chance for patrons to visit its cab. May 2024 marked the 20th anniversary of 3526's return to rail heritage service. 3526 was brought back to life by the then New South Wales Rail Transport Museum on Sunday, May 16, 2004. Back then it was all painted in black, and its first run was a trial trip to Campbelltown in Sydney's west from Thirlmere. Ever since then, the 35 had done multiple trips across parts of New South Wales and is still steaming, now under the caretaker of Transport Heritage New South Wales. couple of model railway layouts are on display inside the museum hall, offering patrons the chance to operate one. The layouts were provided by the Australian Model Railway Association New South Wales branch. The models were manufactured by Hornby, with one layout depicting a typical out-of-the-box Hornby layout, and another layout with models from the former Thomas the Tank Engine range by Hornby. The Thomas Hornby models were manufactured between 1985 to 2018.
It depends. These ones actually are a lot more expensive now.
We now move to the Thirlmere Banks, and 4001 now leads the last train to Picton for Saturday with 6029. Now 6029 leads the train back to Thirlmere and will rest up for Sunday. There were still two more trains for Saturday, as 3265 is seen here backing down towards 6029's carriages. 3265 and 3001 will double head with 4001 at the rear to Picton for a special night train. Originally it was supposed to be one at 6 PM, but due to popular demand, a second one was added for 7 PM. Meanwhile, 3526 will now move out from the amphitheatre near the level crossing to be on display for the night until the 9 PM fireworks. It's the first time in the festival's history that it carries on through the night. Alongside 3526 is the Aveling and Porter steam tip wagon from the Powerhouse Museum.
Thank
4001 will now lead the first night train to Picton. While the engines make their way to Picton, we take a look at more 3526 on display. To conclude Saturday, we see 3001 and 3265 leading the train back into Thirlmere. Two more picnic trains to Kiama ran between Saturday, May 25th and Sunday, May 26, 2024. At Alawa Station, we see 5917 heading back to Tempe from Kiama on the Saturday. Next day, Sunday, May 26, 5917 with beautiful sunshine is seen passing through Hurstville on its second run to Kiama. Chumrail's 42103 for both days is seen assisting the train. On the return journey, 5917 passes through Mortdale heading for Tempe.
Behind the yellow line at all times and allow others to get off before boarding.
There'll be more picnic trains to Kiama in the spring, and this is where we conclude our autumn 2024 edition of Rail Around New South Wales.
The next train to arrive on platform 2 goes to Cronulla. First stop Oakley, then Como, Janali, Sutherland, and then all stations